week it's been. Crave. What are we craving in this life? It's been amazing talking about intimacy, cravings, and all those things, wild cravings. And I'll start off tonight by saying welcome. And I'm super excited that you guys have tuned in all this week. And yeah, I'm just blessed to be sharing this topic with you. Just jumping right into it. Tonight's topic is focused on sex plus God. So we're going to start with the prayer. So if you can join me in prayer. Father God, I just want to thank you for opening up this crave session this week. And as we looked at intimacy, and now, God, all this week points to sex and God. And God, we know you are the ultimate creator. And God, you created us sexual beings. So as we talk about it, God, I just pray that you just speak to us, God, that whatever you're trying to say, that we will hear and we'll take heed, God. So thank you, God, and we open up our hearts. I open up myself to be used by you. This I pray in Jesus' name. Amen. In the early stages, or the early days of the internet, the topics that were searched by many were about God and sex. Makes sense, right? Human beings are very religious in general and very sexual. I'm not sure what the top web searches are now on any given day. Maybe in our day and age right now, COVID restriction will be the top one. But, I might be wrong. But we can all agree that God and sex are definitely up there as well. So some studies all along, one in 2013, Dr. Christopher Ryan delivered one of the most provocative TED Talks ever recorded. His title alone is enough to stop the whole human race in its tracks for some careful contemplation. Are we designed to be sexual omnivore? Well, omni, of course, means all. The vorse, part of the word refers to eating or consuming. To be a sexual omnivore is to have a wide sexual appetite and partake freely of sexual activity with multiple partners. So, are we designed to be sexual omnivores? Makes you wonder, right? The answer Dr. Ryan gives is yes, we are. So this is what he bases his answer, rather logically, on a worldview called naturalism or materialism, which holds that human beings are evolving animals. And nothing more, as such, says naturalism, we humans are purely governed by the biological instinct to survive by eating food and having sex. In this worldview, there is no moral dimension to our existence, no objective categories of right and wrong, no actual altruistic, true selfless love. The bottom line idea is that human beings are designed by evolution for multiple sex partners in order to increase the survivability of the species. Ryan is the co-author of the book Sex at Dawn, in which he sets forth his case in detail. The notion of monogamy, sexual fidelity to one person, according to Ryan, and according to evolutionary naturalism, isn't merely an old-fashioned idea carried over from Buddhism religion. It is contrary to what we are as human beings, contrary to our very nature. Faithfulness, being a religious concept, should be discarded as repressive to human nature. Sex is merely a physical act for the purpose of reproduction. So the faster we get over the notion of monogamy, the better. This is so interesting. The logical outworking of this view of human sexuality is unfolding right before our eyes. Well, 2 years later, in September 2015, a remarkable article was published by Vanity Fair. This magazine has no philosophical or religious interest. So you won't say that I'm being religious, I'm preaching down on you. It has no religious interest. It's just reporting on what's taking place in America, in American culture, and around the world. The article is titled, Tinder and the Dawn of the Dating Apocalypse. Apocalypse, you say? Wow. I've never heard that unless it's like the end of times, apocalypse. Now that's an interesting word to use in relation to human sexuality. Wouldn't you agree? Me too. The article is suggesting that we are currently witnessing the complete disintegration of dating system, and something else is emerging to take its place. Tinder, if you know, is a smartphone app. Well, smartphone, has to be smarter than the human brain, but it really isn't. With which you can set a geographic radius. Whether it's a mile, an entire city, or an entire state, or the world. You can set it for yourself. For dating and hookups. Faces and profiles pop up, and you simply swipe right or left. Left indicates no interest, not good looking, doesn't fit my demeanor, is not what I'm looking for. All that 10 lists or the top 10 list that you have of who you want to end up with. Someone who likes to hike, someone who likes doing that and doing this. And when you find the person, you simply swipe right. It makes you wonder what happens to the old-fashioned, hey, how are you doing, face-to-face conversation, writing letters, for those who are ancient. And now, just giving someone your number and be like, hey, let's go for coffee. That doesn't happen anymore. You swipe left. If you don't like it, you swipe right. If you think there's a fair chance you can meet. The Vanity Fair article depicts the situation in a photo that shows a bunch of young adults together in a club. But not really together at all. Because each one, while in one another's presence, is on their phone, searching Tinder or whatever dating app they're on, right? Everyone, the article reports, is drinking, peering into their screen and swiping on their faces of strangers they may have sex with later that evening or not. The Vanity Fair journalist interviewed individuals. What they learned is remarkably and alarming. John, a 26-year-old marketing executive in New York, says, sex has become so easy. I can go to my phone right now, and no doubt, I can find someone I can have sex with this evening, probably before midnight. A young lady by the name of Amanda offers her perspective on what's taking place in the dating apocalypse. There is no dating, she says, no relationship. They are rare. You can have a fling that could last 7-8 months, and you can never actually call someone your boyfriend. Hooking up is a lot easier. No one gets hurt. Amanda says, and then she qualifies, well, not on the surface. Technology with apps like Tinder and with the perversive access porn on the internet is testing the limits of our self-control and moral worth. It reminds me of the near prophetic statement Albert Einstein, the genius, made long before the internet existed. Albert says, I fear. Let me do my Albert Einstein voice. I fear the day that technology will surpass our human interaction. The world will have a generation of idiots. Well, I'm not calling you idiots. Albert Einstein is. Well, you can go find him and Be like, yo, why do you call me an idiot? But I'm not calling you that. It's just the definition he said. There's definitely something scary going on in the realm of human sexuality, don't you think? If we're all becoming a generation of idiots because technology has surpassed our human interaction, right? Here, a month after the Vanity Fair article ran, New York Magazine, exploring the subject on university campuses, ran an article in which it referenced what is being called hookup culture. What is hookup culture, you might ask? Well, the article defines it as meaningless sex with strangers. That's hookup culture, right? The script, according to the ritual, is first, you have sex, then perhaps you date. Or more likely, you just continue hookup, creating a long-term relationship minus the feelings. But that's an interesting idea, and that is precisely what the potential apocalypse of human sexuality is. Coming back to apocalypse, that is it. The article inserts the word theoretically before sex minus feelings. Because, as Amanda said, you can hook up with one person after another and not get hurt. Well, not on the surface, right? You put on the toughness. Sex without feelings, without emotional attachment, and sex without undergoing hurt if the attachment is broken truly is merely theoretically. Because, well, it's just not a real thing. The key idea in both of these articles is simply and profoundly this: sex without love has the potential to bring on a sexual apocalypse. Why, you may ask? Well, this is why we're having this study, right? Sex plus God. Well, because we are not merely evolutionary animals driven by biological urges, and love is not a religious fiction, as we have explored in previous Crave Talks throughout the week. The longing for love we experience is intrinsic to our moral identity, to what we are. Sex and love are vitally connected, so much so that the article goes on to blow our minds with this. Some of what we've learned was unexpected. It appears to be the case that, faced with hookups or nothing, many students on university campuses throughout the United States are simply opting out of college sex. Nearly 40% of the respondents to our polls were virgins. What? Must be kidding, right? Yeah. Sexual chastity is on the rise on American university campuses, American and Canadian. But why, you might ask? Because apparently there is something in the fundamental human makeup that just can't settle for sex without love in the long run. Virginity, blows your mind, is not on the rise because of any externally imposed religious pressure. Rather, we intuitively, innately, find the idea of sex without love to be ultimately unsatisfying prospect. So when faced with the option of endless hookups or no sex at all, many young people are saying no thank you to sex. They either want the real thing, sex that comes with love and trust and faithfulness and loyalty, intimacy, right? Or nothing at all. That's revolutionary and quite insightful. And again, these magazines are not bringing religion or God into issues. They're just reporting their findings. So, the article from the New York Magazine offers this insightful observation. It's as if sexual freedom has become a burden as well as a gift. Sexual freedom is, in fact, backfiring and in the worst way imaginable. Meaningless sex with strangers is killing the human capacity for the emotional dimension of love. GQ magazine, which nobody in the room, nobody, in fact, on earth will associate with any of the sexual purity of religious morals, is somewhat yielding to the inertia of reality. GQ is a men's magazine that specializes in objectifying women for male stimulation. This magazine for men published not too long ago an article titled 10 Reasons Why You Should Quit Watching Porn. Well, there's more than 10 reasons, but can you imagine? But GQ recommending men stop watching porn? Why? Well, the author of the article says, and I'm quoting him, with the easy access to porn these days, it shouldn't come as a surprise that people are beginning to study the effects of it on our sex lives. So even the experts are studying the effects of what pornography does in our relationships or in our sex lives. This author isn't preaching a sermon. No. He has no interest in God or religion per se. Okay? He's simply saying that in the light of emerging scientific data, you should stop watching porn. Why? Because it's going to ruin your sex life. Full stop. That's it. So the author goes on and says, 420 million web pages are dedicated to porn. Oh my gosh. That's too much. Meaning the non-porn internet roughly consists of, well, Wikipedia. You know? But, of course, he's exaggerating, right? For effect. But it's the essential saying that porn is so pervasive on the internet that there's not nearly a whole lot that can compete with it. Whew. Okay, let me take a breather, man. This is getting heavy, right? But stick with me. Scientists at Cambridge, he goes on to say, recently studied the brain scans of porn addicts and found that they looked exactly like those of drug addicts, taking no chemical substance into their bodies, but rather taking pornographic images into their minds. The brain scans of people look the same as the brain scans of drug addicts. He then says, with such an inexhaustible supply of porn at our disposal, there's a growing concern that it is beginning to affect our brains, our relationships, and even our bodies. Well, I won't give you all the 10 reasons. 3 will suffice to get the gist of what the article is saying. The first reason that GQ article says you should stop watching porn is because watching porn causes a decline in arousal. We're witnessing in a porn culture a phenomenon like no other with regards to human sexuality. Whereas erectile dysfunction was once a problem reserved for older men, now men in their 20s and 30s are experiencing the inability to perform sexually due to porn. Much the same as a drug addict cannot continue achieving the same level of high with the same level of drug use. Just you want more and want more and want more because the normal has been lifted to a new normal. Number 2, users feel control rather than in control when watching porn. Reason number 8, 34% of the users report that their taste become more and more deviant. More and more deviant, that is, until you come to the point where the relation between two individuals in a committed relationship cannot produce sexual arousal anymore. That's why the article is basically saying men should project their sexuality and their capacity for sexual pleasure by ceasing to watch porn. GQ is issuing a warning that if you keep watching porn, you are running your capacity for sexual pleasure. A long time ago, the Apostle Paul, now let's jump into the apostle, spoke of this very phenomenon when he described human beings yielding their bodies to sexual promiscuity. He said that eventually the sexual omnivorous human being comes to the place where he or she is past feeling. Sexual pleasure without love gradually kills the capacity for pleasure. That's what both Paul and scientific evidence are telling us. Well, C.S. Lewis insightfully says, lust is a poor, weak, whimpering thing compared to what richness an energy of desire which will arise when lust has been killed. So Lewis is suggesting that killing lust is in the best interest of increasing one's capacity for pleasure. Well, let me blow your mind again. If you're ancient, you remember Playboy magazines, right? Well, even Playboy has decided in favor of clothing. What? The original porn magazine has decided to stop running photos of naked women. Scott Flanders, Playboy CEO, explains why. This is what it says, and I quote him. You are now one click away from every sex act imaginable for free. And so it just per se at this juncture. There's no point of producing magazines when you're just one click away from any fantasy there you might have. Sex as an end in itself always falls short of delivering what it promises. That's the point, because love is not merely sex, and sex is not in itself love. This is what we might call the love complex, tapping into the ancient Greek view of love. Well, in Greek, eros for the Greeks was a word that referred to erotic love, to the sexual dimension of love. But then, in addition to eros, there was phileo, or the friendship aspect of love. Then there's storge, which is family love, and there's agape love. Agape is volitional love. It is commitment. It is one person saying to another, come what may, I'm giving myself to you completely for life. Lifelong commitment may to our minds seem like an old-fashioned idea, but science is coming full circle into the sexual revolution to inform us that the old-fashioned idea is really the idea that works. The idea of combining sex with lifelong faithfulness and friendship and family, engaging the whole person in the whole love complex, isn't only what we want, it's what we need. So a culture of meaningless sex with strangers, to quote the New York Magazine's article again, raises the question, does sex have a meaning? Because according to Christopher Ryan and a lot of other sexual omnivore proponents, sex has no meaning beyond reproduction. Scientific journals are running one article after another suggesting that men and women should not expect sexual faithfulness in a relationship. Just get over it. Don't bring your heart with you into sex, they're telling us. Don't expect fidelity because we're just animals on an evolutionary quest for survival. And sex is nothing more than physical urges being satisfied. If your husband has an affair, if your wife sleeps around, no big deal. That's what you should expect from an animal. But are we animals? But does sex have a meaning? Well, I'm going to suggest to you this evening that yes, sex has a meaning. Sex is traceable to our higher reality, much higher. So now, let's look back around to the moral and spiritual interpretation of sex. Now let's get all churchy up on this, okay? Let's get church. The Bible declares God is love. These three words, in my opinion, contains more explanatory power than any other statement that could possibly be made. With this simple equation, God is love, I believe we can begin to understand what human sexuality means. How so? You ask. Well, because the same Bible that makes the astounding claim that God is love makes the equal astounding claim that God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him, male and female, he created them. Now, just think this through for a minute. The God of the biblical narrative creates a man and a woman, puts them in a garden called Eden. Now, imagine me in the garden, which pleasure, and says to them, be fruitful and multiply. God, according to the Bible, is the author of sex and pleasure. So first of all, contrary to worst religious dogma, God is not down on sex and God is not against pleasure. God is very much pro-pleasure and anti-misery. As the creator of all, and therefore the inventor of sex and the pleasure that goes along with it. God designed us to experience sex within the context of faithful love, precisely because he wants us to experience all the happiness and flourishing love has to offer. Precisely. According to the biblical storyline, love is not merely an emotional feeling. It's not a shallow sentiment. Love involves feelings. It involves sentiment. But love is, according to the biblical storyline, relational faithfulness, loyalty, commitment, giving rise to trust and yielding the highest quality of pleasure, the pleasure of being in love when you make love. God is connected, vitally connected with sex in at least two ways. First of all, according to the biblical story, God is connected with sex by virtue of the fact that God invented sex. But God is connected with sex in another way. According to the Bible, sex points beyond itself to the greatest love imaginable. Sex is not an end in itself. It transcends itself by pointing to love of the highest kind. It is a window into the intimacy we can experience with God. Once again, the word intimacy. Intimacy, you're giving yourself all, like having that agape love, giving everything. You're not just one thing. Intimacy we can experience with God. This is why we find throughout the Bible that God presents himself metaphorically as a lover seeking his beloved. It's a strange idea at first glance, but extremely beautiful and meaningful upon deeper consideration. Apparently, the God who made us wants us to know and experience his love for us with a level of intimacy and joy that sex best represents. The combination of sex with all its pleasure and commitment, with all the sense of security and trust it grants, is a window into God's love. G.K. Chesterton very insightfully said that every man who knocks on the door of a brothel is looking for God. What he means is that human beings ultimately are not mere biologically creatures designed by evolution to satisfy physical urges or sexual omnivore style with anyone who happens to be available on your phone app. Human beings are ultimately made for a relationship with our Maker that transcends any kind of pleasure we can experience in this life. Sex transcends itself by pointing to love. And in pointing to love, sex points to God. My friends have a song that beautifully conveys this idea. I hope you're blessed.